Hello and welcome back to the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast. I'm your host and Foreclosure Deals Coach, Donny Coram, and this is the show where we discuss how to find, figure, fund, fix, and flip a foreclosure deal. You know, guys, what we're seeing right now is a big advancement of what we're going to call luxury foreclosures, being defined as homes that are priced well above the median and are now currently foreclosing. Now, the reasons for that vary. We're going to get into that, but the real question is buying a luxury foreclosure deal a good idea for the common investor? Lots to discuss as far as that goes. We're going to discuss that here in the show. Let's get going. All right, guys, welcome back to the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast. I am your host and Foreclosure Deals Coach, Donny Coram. And once again, this is the show where we discuss how common investors just like you can find, figure, fund, fix, and flip a foreclosure deal. You know, a lot of people see the HUD foreclosure market in particular, and it's one of my favorite places to look for deals. It gives you a idea on what's happening in the foreclosure market, but also has some great deals on it from time to time. Well, lately, and I'm going to pop this up here in just a little bit, we have seen a rash, if you will, of more expensive luxury style foreclosures. Let me share my screen here so you can see what I'm talking about. Here we go. So one of those luxury foreclosures popped up here in Elizabeth, Colorado. Let's check this one out. $700,000, which is well above the median average of a house we would normally acquire, right? In certain areas, this might be the average price of a home in your area, right? If you look in California, some of the more expensive markets, New York, etc., 700 grand may seem very entry level. But because HUD foreclosures like this one are generally FHA loans that have gone bad, you don't see as many very expensive homes hitting the HUD foreclosure market. Typically, those are done with conventional loan programs or even jumbo loan programs. And as such, you don't have a huge rash of luxury higher end homes that have come in on HUDs. Obviously, this is the exception, not the rule. And we're taking a look at the Elizabeth property, and it doesn't look very bad. You know, if you know anything about Elizabeth, Colorado, it is a beautiful part of Colorado. Wonderful mountain views, nice ranges. You get a little bit of a feel here for what you're dealing with. This property was built. Let's see. Let's get the year built on this. In 2021, you can see there, all right? So it's not terribly old. It's very expensive, $700,000. And I haven't run comps on it yet, but I will say that it would not be abnormal based on this square footage. Let's see, the lot, it's 3,100 square feet. So this could very easily be an $800,000, $900,000 home in Elizabeth, Colorado, okay? So one of the benefits to buying a HUD repo is typically they are priced significantly below market. HUD is not in the business of hoarding properties. They have money tied up into this deal. Remember, the FHA, or Federal Housing Association, is not a lender per se. It's an insurance company. So what it does, it provides insurance to the lender that says if this loan defaults anytime down the road, then we will cover the balance of the loan, making the lender whole and allowing the lender to offer people a 3.5% down payment, as opposed to what's, you know, standard issue for a conventional loan at 20% down. The downside to that is you have to have something called mortgage insurance, PMI for short, or private mortgage insurance, which raises your payment a little bit, but it does allow homeowners to hop into properties with this 3.5% down payment. Obviously much more affordable than trying to buy this, you know, whatever this went for, we don't know right now, but let's say they bought it for $600,000. They would have had to have put $120,000 down on a conventional loan. They did have to put down 3.5% down on this loan. In that same example, closer to 20,000, maybe 25,000. Needless to say, a great program for people who don't have a ton of money to put down, but do want to enter the housing market at an earlier stage and are okay with the private mortgage insurance. Going to help them to get into the dream of home ownership. But when these properties go bad, as they do, they become HUD foreclosures, as it did in this situation. And now you've got a luxury HUD. I want to show you another one. And it's rare. It's very rare that we see one, much less two. Here's one in Montrose, Colorado. Check this guy out. Beautiful, gorgeous deck there. Incredible views, which Montrose is just really well known for. A little bit dated on the carpet and etc. But definitely in a higher price bracket. This was actually started its pricing at $770,000. And remember this about HUD. They price their properties what they feel. I've been watching this formula for the better part of 20 years since I was a career agent in the real estate retail side. They tend to price the properties at roughly 10% below what they believe retail is. And then they price drop the home about 10% every 30 days or so to try to find the right buyer for the property. In this case, they priced it at $770,000, which means they believed it was worth 10% more than that, or $850,000 at the time. They've dropped it since to now $693,000. And it's, this is a tough market to move luxury property in general. It's a tougher market to move luxury property that requires some updating. It doesn't look like the place is trashed by any means, but it definitely needs some work, right? It needs to be updated, especially if you're going to spend just under $700,000 for the property. You'd be expecting to get a nicer home than this currently offers. The upside to the HUD bidding process, and part of the benefits of the foreclosure profit system, is we know the HUD bidding process very well. We would throw in an offer on this probably in the mid sixes, maybe a little lower, 620, 630, and hope to get it in that range. We might even offer lower at 600,000 and wait till HUD decides they want to take that offer. You would be shocked at how often we get discounts on HUD property because, once again, HUD is not in the business of keeping the home. They generally want to get rid of it. They're not giving them away by any means, but there's definitely still some room on this to get a better deal on the property. One of the many things you don't have to worry about with my foreclosure profit system, because we handle all the negotiation of the buy side on your behalf. All you have to do is evaluate the deals after we find them for you and determine if they're the right fit for you, with all the data that you need, including the home inspection, the labor estimate, parts estimate. This really comes down to a math equation, guys. It's not about how you feel about the property or even the area or any of those things. It really comes down to what's the right buy price, how much you have to put into the property to get it to where you want it, and then what are you ultimately going to sell the property for in the end. If you do the proper math on that, you'll find the desired profit target of $25,000 or better, which is what we're looking for. And semi-obviously, if you were spending this much, $600,000-$700,000 on a home, you would want a higher profit target than our typical. But we generally buy homes that are at or well below the median. Right now, the median price of a home in Colorado Springs is wandering in the late fours, early fives. Let's call it 485, give or take. So we generally are buying at 300 or the early threes or less, and we're looking to sell for the early fours. Okay. So all this comes down to the math equation, but every now and then, and right now there's a rash of them, of what we're calling luxury foreclosures. And what do we attribute that to? Well, in 2020, we talked about the moratorium that was placed on foreclosures to allow people to keep their homes. That continued through the Biden administration for a while. It was about 22, 23 before they lifted the moratorium. And then, there's a whole backlog of foreclosures. We're calling them zombie foreclosures that are now left on the market that at some point are going to have to be sold. And these luxury ones you're seeing are the result of homes that probably should have foreclosed way back in 2020, 2019 even. They've been sitting for some time. And that's one of the downside to buying a house at the HUD foreclosures list, is because a lot of times they've been vacant for a year or more, which leads to some hassle in getting the utilities turned back on. We're just going through one right now in the Pueblo market that took us 6 to 8 weeks, give or take, just to get the power and utilities on in that property because of the permitting process, getting somebody into the property who could pull permits on it, getting the county, Pueblo County, which is not known for their speed, right, to get out there and get the utilities on the property. It took a bunch of time and delayed our project quite a bit. Thankfully, we had financed a minimal amount on the property. So the I guess the cash hit wasn't as bad if we had spent $600,000 or $700,000 on the house at 12% interest. You could very easily be at $6,000-$7,000 a month while the property is sitting vacant. You're waiting for the utilities. It could get expensive very quickly if you don't have the cash reserves to manage that. So first answer we're going to answer about whether it's a good fit is it really depends on where you're at in your experience level. Okay, I will say luxury flips in general are not for the faint of heart, and they're definitely not for the undercapitalized. A lot of people go into flipping. They see these McMansions, houses they would love to dream. They dream of owning themselves or living in, and they see this huge opportunity. I've seen it lots of times. The stars light up in their eyes and go, man, that would be a great house to own or to flip and make a bunch of money. I could brag to my friends about this. The problem with that is it generally results in a very good shot at getting bankrupted by a flip. Unlike a entry-level flip where, you have a lower payment for the debt service, you've got lower requirements for the remodel. There's just a lot of financial benefits to going cheap, especially if you're inexperienced. Now, this is not to say that we've never done a luxury flip. I will say one of the perks of being married to a interior designer is I was willing to take on some additional risks because I knew that my lovely wife, Laura, could handle it and get through a luxury flip because she knows what it's supposed to look like. And we had some budget benefits that we wouldn't give to people who were just getting started out. Here's an example of one. We flipped this property on Red Tail at Highlands Ranch, and I'm a little bit pained when I see this one because when we bought this property, we bought it, wait for it now, for $865,000. Okay. Laura spent a good amount of money on that remodel, just over $100K. It came out beautifully. Check out some of the photos here from the end product because, again, she's an interior designer. She knows what things are supposed to look like. What's bothersome about this deal is that we sold it based on the market value at the time. You got to remember, this is probably, this was during COVID. We actually moved out of downtown Denver into this property because we were tired of being cooped up in our condo because a lot of, Denver fell apart real fast during COVID. But we listed this, I think, at $1.15 million. That's about what we got for it. You can see this estimate now, $1.72 million. So needless to say, I'm kind of wishing we didn't sell that one, right? That went up another $600,000 in a couple of years. Obviously would have had a massive benefit to my bottom line. Hindsight's 2020, and we weren't in a financial position to keep that house, but we definitely loved that luxury flip. We did another one that's worth talking about on Timber Meadow here in the Black Forest area of Colorado Springs, Colorado, that I will show you as well because it's super cool. Here we go. If I remember the address, 16365. There we go. Nope. All right, not finding that one right now. That's okay. You get the idea. The takeaway here, guys, is that luxury flips are only for well-capitalized, experienced investors, okay? And there's obviously the temptation to spend $1 million or $600,000 or $700,000 on a property, do the investment, keeping in mind your investment on a luxury flip is going to be higher. You have to figure that they're usually larger, right? 3,000, 4,000 square feet. The upside to one of the ones we looked at is it wasn't in terrible condition. So ideally, you're not putting a lot of money into it, but your debt service is going to be much higher. Once again, we're financing these deals at somewhere between 10 and 14%, okay? We'll average that out to 12% interest, but if you finance, if you bought that property for $700,000, right, and that you're going to finance 10% down on that or $630,000, your debt service is going to be $6,300 a month. I do not want you to think from a position of scarcity. It is all relative, okay? We're depending on where you're at financially, there are definitely more financial rewards to buying a luxury flip, but you really have to know what you're getting into. And as a result, I generally do not advise it for people just getting started out in fix and flips. That being said, if you're an experienced investor, you've got a good amount of capitalization and the numbers make sense. That's the most important thing. We can completely discount the fact that it's a $600,000 house. What we have to factor in is what we're going to be selling it for on the back end. We need to do a full comp analysis analysis, which we're not going to take the time to do on the show today, though I can generally get a comp analysis done in 15 to 20 minutes. So it's not super time consuming. Once you have the right experience and tools to do it, we can really determine what we think the retail budget on that property is going to be. If that comp analysis, and I think it would, comes back that we're buying it in the mid sixes and we're going to sell it for $850, $900 even, that is absolutely a deal. But you're going to need a good lender partner to see the vision on that. Elizabeth's is a very rural community, right? You're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. A lot of lenders don't like rural communities. So you need to be stealing it. And most importantly, you need to have the money to cover that debt service. Then you got to figure what the remodel costs are going to be. And two things are going to hit you there. Number one, you've got the higher square footage that tends to be on luxury homes, right? And that house I showed you on Redtail, that was 6,200 square feet of house. Okay, so that thing was just a massive, massive house, and everything costs more. You're looking at $40,000 in flooring, right? The roof was very expensive. The windows were very expensive. Everything about that house, based on the economies of scale, was going to cost a great deal more. We weren't that well capitalized at the time, so I'm not going to lie to you. That was very nerve-wracking for the finance side of this. The interior designer was having the time of her life, right? All this square footage, like a giant playground for her. But on the financial side of it, that's not enjoyable with our current capitalization. And of course, we didn't know what COVID was going to do. There's a couple of things that were very big unknowns back then. It all worked out. Obviously, the property went substantially up in value. And in hindsight, I wish we had kept it till it was worth 1.5 or 1.6 million. I made a lot more money on that deal. But, it's just my wife and I. We didn't need a massive house. We were living in that one, and renting that out gets difficult. So you got to factor that in as well, right? If you got to cover the debt service on your own, a lot of times you can turn to rentals for an entry-level flip. You can always convert it to a rental property. But how many tenants are out there looking for a property with a $6,000, $7,000 a month rental payment? Not near as many. Okay. So although the reward on luxury flipping can be very great, the risk is definitely higher. And as a result, we just steer away from anything above the median price, especially with the market as volatile as it is right now. Will that always be the case? Absolutely not. The idea behind the market as a whole and the system that we offer with the foreclosure profit system is that we alter our strategy for our clients based on what's happening in the real market, something the independent investor doesn't have the benefit of doing, right? The only person you can consult when it's just you is you, right? But with this system, you're getting the benefit to all the people inside of the system. We're now at 43 clients who we're seeing in real time what's happening, right? And how we need to adapt accordingly to what's happening to make the right decisions for our clients, our investors, the people who are buying deals actively. All right. So all this is to say is don't do a luxury flip until you're ready. All right. And you will get ready, but walk before you run, right? You need to walk before you run. You're not in a rush to go out there and do a McMansion flip. Rather than that, you want to do a good couple of years of doing entry-level flips in entry-level markets like Pueblo, Colorado, Colorado Springs, Colorado in the entry-level market, et cetera. This is going to reduce your risk exposure by allowing you to buy the moderate house. You're going to have the most amount of buyers because you're selling at or below the median, right? And your debt service is going to be minimal because you're spending less money to buy the property. When the market really turned in 22, we shifted to Pueblo, Colorado over Colorado Springs, Colorado, because debt service, once again, the houses we were going to retail them in two of the worst years that retail had seen in over 30 years. Okay, those stats are in, okay? The 2024 will go down in history as the worst year in volume of sales for retail real estate since 1995. Give that some thought, okay? So it hasn't been that we've been doing anything wrong, and it's simply been that the market was not conducive, and you can blame that on a series of things. I'd like to not just pigeonhole the administration for it, but there was a lot of things that happened at the government level that made it very difficult for retail real estate to seem appetizing and to warrant buyers coming into the marketplace. That direct result impacted a huge industry, the real estate industry, billions of dollars, people who are, rely on that. that, building slowed down, right? It didn't make a ton of sense to build spec homes. And that's bad because we still have a massive shortage of single family homes in the US and the world, really. At this point, where you could really look at how many people are going to need housing versus the number of houses that are available, and there's a massive shortage. This should mean that capitalism looks at that scenario and wants to fix it by providing housing to the marketplace. But with all of the economic, I guess, chagrin problems, shenanigans is what I was looking for. It's the word I don't get to use very often, shenanigans. With the shenanigans that were taking place in the real estate market, the builders out there weren't as prone to wanting to jump in and take a risk. The private investor wasn't making as much money as they had been in 20 and 21 for doing flips. What is a flip actually worth to the flipper right now? Well, there was a time where we were targeting 20 to 25K flips, okay, because that's just what we go after. We want the ease in transaction. We want the speed we can get it done in. But because the market was going up so fast, we were very often making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Yeah, people were overbidding on properties during that time, and it was a wonderful time financially. But as we proved, it was completely unsustainable. Okay, we can't go back to a market where hyperinflation is dictating. And what I do agree with in the Fed's actions is that had to be stopped. The best way to stop it was to substantially increase interest rates, which increased the mortgage rate, which stopped as many buyers from entering the market, which of course made it less appetizing for investors to buy these houses and flip them. But as always, they overreacted a little bit, didn't they? They went a little far on that interest rate increase, leaving us in a situation where houses just weren't moving at all. Then you couple that with a lack of confidence in the leadership and what the administration, the people running the country were doing. And it became very, very difficult to contemplate a world where buying and investing in real estate was the right thing to do for several years. Well, guys, I'd like to think that with the current administration, with Trump in office, that things are going to turn around, but it will not be an overnight success story. Okay. So as much as I'd love to jump back into luxury flips, and I can tell you, my wife is salivating right now, just thinking about buying another McMansion flip because she just loves it. Again, it's an interior designer dream come true. It's like a giant playground for her to dream up ideas and concepts and see them come to life. And she is so good at it that it is awesome to watch it take place. I still have to very carefully look at the market and go, are luxury properties going to sell at the pace? And can we manage the debt service while we're waiting on it? One, even at $5,000, $6,000 a month is tolerable. But there was a time when we were doing 5, 6, 7 flips at a time, right? And our debt service was $30,000 to $35,000 a month just to cover the mortgages that we were doing. Now, on the flip side of that, if you'll pardon the pun, we were also selling 4 to 5 houses a month, right? So if you're making 25, 30 grand per property, and in times we're making more than that, 40 to 50,000 per property, that 30,000 in debt service wasn't fun, but it was manageable, right? We were able to cover it financially with what we were selling. Okay, so you really got to time the market if you're going to take this on to understand that on a luxury flip, you will likely be in that property for much longer, 4 to 5 months. The construction is going to take longer. They don't happen fast because you got to be higher on your workmanship, higher on your parts. I remember Laura had to have these very specific cabinets on one of the properties that we did, and it took 2.5 months to get the cabinets, and that was super frustrating for me because we're burning interest. But she was going after a very specific design. And, if either my wife or an interior designer, it's not a good idea to argue with them, right? She was going to get what she wanted, even if it was going to take a little bit more time to get there, And so I just didn't, eventually had to concede that we were going to wait for it to happen. But those were expensive cabinets, both in what they cost and the time consumption of waiting for them to come in stock during, a post-COVID area where supply chain was a little sketchy and things were weird, but we had to hit a certain image, and that image cost time. You don't have a ton of time in this game in general, but you really don't have time if you financed $1 million property at 10%, 12% interest. Your payment of our debt service on that was 10 grand a month, right? It was at a time where we could sneeze at 10 grand a month. We were flipping so many properties, but we were not in that time anymore. And certainly I would reconsider that today because of the way the financials work. It should be noted as we wrap up that the market is cyclical. Okay. And what a lot of investors don't understand coming into this is that there are great years and there are bad years. It is not always about making a ton of money all the time. That's the goal. Don't get me wrong. Okay. And you can maintain some degree of consistency and make a solid living if you're doing 3 to 4 deals per year and beyond. You can definitely live on your fix and flip business. Okay. But there are cycles where it gets much tougher. And we have been in a down cycle for real estate investing overall for at least 2 years, and some would argue for the entire Biden administration. Okay, that it was no longer really conducive. We made it work because we had a lot of a lot of fuel in the tank from the COVID crisis, dropping rates so low. It seemed like wonderment for so long. But when we got to the end of 22 and rates started going up, it was very easy to see the party had ended. And we've been struggling as an organization and as, in this business since that point. Not that no deals have taken place, just that they've taken longer. We've made less. It's just been a harder process. Okay. I'd like to think that happy days are here again. We are definitely more optimistic with the changes in the market, but a light switch didn't go off with the Trump administration and suddenly everything's better. There's still some stuff that has to kind of work through the system, but I'm optimistic. I think the market overall is optimistic, and I think now is an excellent time to consider getting into fixing and flipping, but sticking to entry-level products with entry-level buyers so you don't get yourself in a financial trouble as this market is adapting to the current times. All right. So that's kind of the pitch for today, guys. I really appreciate you joining us. If you have any comments, hit me up now. Love to hear from you about your thoughts on luxury flipping and how excited you are to get on board with that. I will also, as always, encourage you, if now's the right time to hop in and learn more about foreclosure investing, go to foreclosureprofitsystem.com. There's a real quick application there to determine if this is the right fit for you and for my team, to make sure that we can find you a deal, to analyze the deal properly for you, fund the deal using my private money lenders, fix the deal with my contracting teams, and then flip the deal where you keep all the profit, but we use my team agent who gives us a substantial discount to list the properties on our behalf, making this an absolute no-brainer for anybody looking to get into the real estate investment space and make a ton of money doing it. Reach out to me. I'd love to talk more with you about if this is the right fit for your financial situation, and if so, look at how we can move forward together and make some money doing some deals. With that, this is Donny Coram, your foreclosure deals coach. Thanking you so much for tuning in each and every single week to the Foreclosure Deals Coach podcast, and reminding you now and always, don't buy a house, buy a deal.